Welcome back, everybody, to this Tableau for FIRST Robotics video course presented by FRC Team 2834. Today is video 11, and we're going to be working with multiple data sources and data merging versus data blending. Let's get started. So far, we've learned about all there is to making great charts. We learned about using single-dimensional data, multi-dimensional data, one measure, two measures, a combination of them. We've learned trend lines, discrete versus continuous data. We've learned how to color our charts. We've learned dashboards, stories, filters, basically every calculated fields. We've learned everything that we need to know to make great charts in Tableau with one data source. But what if we want to add a second data source? A lot of teams out there, and I'm assuming a lot of you viewers, are going to use pit scouting data as well as your match scouting data. What if you want to visualize your pit scouting data at the same time? Well, you could make a completely separate Tableau workbook and import that pit scouting data spreadsheet, but you don't have to do that. You can put them in the same spreadsheet because Tableau supports multi-data source functionality. So we're going to go over to our data source tab. I've created a scouting or an Excel sheet that is filled with pit scouting data. So I've got 6 teams. And I have 2 Boolean data values. Can they hang with 1s for yes and 0s for no's? And can they play defense with 1s for yes and 0s for no's? And I've made a subsheet called pits, and that's what it's in. And this sheet is called pit scouting. So we're going to go back to Tableau. What we're going to do is we're going to hit add over here on connections. And we're going to add a Microsoft Excel file. And pit scouting from my downloads folder, which is that sheet we just looked at. Hit open. All right, so now we have something really interesting going on here. We have our book 1 and sheet 1, which is that subsheet within book 1. And that is our main scouting data worksheet where we're getting all of that numerical data from. But pit scouting, we've added a connection to the pit scouting worksheet. And now pit scouting, that subsheet, is showing up in here. And they look almost connected. That's because this is called a merge or a join. So it automatically joined 2 of the values that Tableau sees as being connected. So this is called a data merge. A data merge happens when you have 2 values that are equivalent to each other, such as team number and team number. Those are the same thing. When you have 2 values that represent the same thing, 2 measures or dimensions, then Tableau will automatically join them together, and you can do different types of join statements. I'm not going to go through specifically what each of these things are. Inner and left joins are very similar. A right join and a full outer join are different. There are other videos out there that'll explain that more in depth. It's a more advanced topic that will take a little while to go through. But for all intents and purposes, you have merged 2 data sources together, and Tableau has recognized that team number is the common measure or dimension inside these data sources. If for some reason it didn't recognize it, it would allow me to enter from the data source sheet 1 or book 1, what do I want? I want team number. Okay, enter that. And then I want to connect it to the team number from pit scouting. There we go. Our data is now connected. And you can see over here, our team numbers are being shown equally. But we also have this data for them, which is, do they play defense? Can they hang? And it's basically adding from a completely separate data source 2 new measures that we can use. And the 2 dimensions, team number, are being combined into 1 dimension, just called team number. So if we go over to make a new chart, you can see this. We've got 2 different team numbers, but they are actually equivalent to each other, these 2 dimensions, because what we did over here is we made them equal to each other. Team number equals team number. So now what we can do is I can take either one of them. I'm just going to use the team number from sheet 1, put it into columns, and I'm going to take the, let's see, maybe the, so we get these, this divided data. Pit scouting is given in a folder, and the measures that go with the pit scouting data, and then sheet 1 is given in a folder, and our calculated fields are given on the outside. So I'm going to take data from pit scouting and say I want to see the hanging data. Okay, great. I've got 2 teams. And plays defense data. Great. So that's all right there. And we've merged our 2 data sources. Now, before you go on to data merging, please do some research on how Tableau data joining works, because your data might get messed up if you don't completely understand that. Another way, and some might say a better way of adding another data source, I'm just going to remove this, is data blending. And that is a different way of adding another data source. So I'm going to remove these. Now, you can see Sheet 1, Book 1 is the name of this data source and this general workbook. If I click on this little cylinder right here, I can add a new data source, and in a different manner. So I'm going to click Excel. I'm going to add my pit scouting. And now I have a completely separate page that independently displays the pit scouting data. And if I click on the cylinder again, I can go back to my original data source. This method is called data blending. And I prefer this method as opposed to data merging because it's a lot easier to work with. You don't have to deal with those pesky joint statements. And it's just a lot easier to work with. So now if we go to create our new chart, we over here can select either one of our data sources. Sheet 1 is our main scouting data, and then pit scouting is just our pit scouting data. So whatever we drag in there first, say the team number from sheet 1, is going to be deemed the primary data source, and it will be given this blue check. And say I want to see instead a team's pit scouting data. You see this little link statement, that's it telling you that it found that team number from sheet 1 and team number from pit scouting are the same thing, and it linked them together, much like those join statements. And I can drag can hang over to here, and there's my hanging data. Perfect. And you get an orange check signifying the secondary data source that you're using. So this is called data blending. It's a lot easier to work with, and I would suggest using data blending over data merging. But if you are going to use data merging, please do some research on join statements. There are plenty of YouTube videos out there and charts explaining it, but it's just a little too much for me to explain in one of these videos. Congratulations, you've reached the end of this course. FRC Team 2834 is happy to have shared with you this video course. Please feel free to comment any questions or future Tableau video suggestions, and we will do our best to respond within 24 hours. Also, feel free to reply to the Chief Delphi post this video series was shared on. The link is in the description. We hope you have learned about what you need to know to propel your team forward strategically. From everyone at FRC Team 2834, good luck during your season, whenever that may be.